Yeah, welcome back, Matthias. How are you doing in summer? After a short summer break, we are back with Power BI tool news. And today I am still on vacation, but Matthias has to work here. It's very nice.
I'm very
Project Bay.
jealous. Looks
Yes,
amazing.
Project Bay is the only co-work at the German Baltics.
Hmm.
Quite cool place to work. Yeah, and here I'm for the week, but that was enough about me. Now it's only about you and Power BI tools. You brought us merging and workflows.
Yes, I thought let's talk uh, process and workflow a little bit rather than just tooling, because ultimately it's both. Both things are needed, and I don't think there are too many talks out there focusing on how do rather than getting started with source control, how do you actually use a source control server like GitHub or Azure DevOps? What do you do with branches and so on and so forth? So I thought let's do a quick demo around that. I've got a GitHub repo open, which is public, as you can see. In fact, I actually set this up for a talk I did back in May with the Manchester Power BI group. And before we get started, just wanted to point out a few things. So first of all, on the GitHub PBI Tools landing page, I recently added a new README file, which actually lists the various public demo repositories in place now with some annotations. And you can actually see which particular features they showcase, when the repo was created, what the corresponding data set is, and also some notes. So the one we're looking at today is the one in the second row here. I used that, as I said, back in May in Manchester. There is a full recording available from that session, and I just wanted to give that as a reminder as well. If you keep this link in mind, go to pbi-tools/YouTube. You will get to my public YouTube playlist, which I constantly keep adding to. The session in question right now is the third one, the one with the yellow background here. So this is where I'm actually introducing branching models and how they ultimately feed into workflows. So don't want to give too much further introduction here. So this particular repo has a Contoso data model, and it has a number of issues defined. I'm basically trying to replicate a proper team workflow here, where a team collectively works on a new release. Different people pick up different issues, and ultimately it all gets merged into a new release. So we have version 1.0 out in production right now, and we have a new milestone defined, which is for the 1.1 release. So basically 1.0 plus additional things. We've got that defined as a milestone here, and that's basically a container around different issues. And we can see one is already closed, and 6 are still open. And in fact, except for the last one, which I only added earlier today, all the others are already implemented. So we can sort of fast forward a little bit. I just wanted to demonstrate what an ideal workflow would look like if someone came into the project and actually were tasked to work on a particular issue, and what that looks like from a workflow point of view. So the issue is upgrade the project to actually use the latest release of PBI tools. When this one was set up back in May, it was set up with, whatever PBI tools release was the latest at that point in time. And so that's relatively straightforward, I'd say. If I go in my VS Code view, I'm just going to make the font a little bigger so you can see it better. This is my project. I can see I'm currently on a issue branch. So I'm not on the main branch. Main branch always represents what's in production. I'm actually on a specific branch where, in this particular case, work on issue 7 is happening. And so the issue 7 is actually completed. Just take my word for it. The one I want to work with now is 11, right? So we can see that here. So the first thing to do would be to create a new branch. I've got a naming convention here, which in the recording I mentioned earlier, I talk about in more detail. So following the convention, I would basically call this issue 11 and then put my initials there. So I've got a new branch now where I can basically start making changes to my sources. Ultimately, this is already CI/CD enabled, which means anything that gets pushed into GitHub will then automatically get deployed into a particular environment. And there's actually an issue with the deployment, which we can very easily see. So if I run a deployment locally in what-if mode, a particular problem is going to come up straight away. And the problem here is that the latest preview release of PBI tools had some minor breaking changes with regard to the deployment manifest. And those breaking changes actually come through here. It was something related to how refreshes are defined in the manifest. So it's absolutely vital, as we can see, that this project gets upgraded to the latest version because we can't even run it locally right now. For reference, if I go back here quickly, in PBI Tools issue 165, I actually talked about this very same problem, and I explained how that came about and what to do. As you can see, that happened over a month ago on the 2nd of August. So going back here, the issue is, as I said earlier, my deployment manifest now needs to be defined slightly differently. And that is actually relevant down here. So where we have environment-specific refresh settings, previously we had an opt-in model, which was basically just a Boolean flag. You set true or false if you wanted a refresh to run for that particular environment. Now, it's no longer Boolean. Now it's actually expecting an object. And that's because the latest preview allows to make more substantial environment-specific refresh changes. So, for instance, for different environments, you could set completely different refresh types. You could switch between full and automatic, for instance, or in specific environments, you could disable or enable certain tables or partitions to be refreshed. And so that's why it needs to be declared as a object now, because we could potentially put we could potentially put relatively complex information in here. And the other thing that's necessary is where we have the global definition for refresh, we now need to enable refreshes. And there we go. So that's the difference, basically. Enabling refresh happens globally, and then at the environment level, you can selectively disable it. So it's an opt-out rather than opt-in model now. So this should do, and I can very easily test that. The advantage of being able to run everything locally comes through here. And as we can see, all right, so we can see there's still a problem in the UAT environment. So probably got something wrong here. Yes, don't know how that happened, but I think I know how that happened because I accidentally changed the report setting. So there we go. And if I then try again, everything is good. So the manifest is now valid. It can be read. And here we go. So we've run things in what if mode, which means most things are being validated. However, nothing's being sent across, to Power BI or anywhere else. So it's completely safe. So that's that. And I happen to know that there's something else we also need to change, but I'm just pretending, that I'm a developer now who hasn't fully thought this through. So I'm pretending that I think I've actually completed my task. So what would I do? I would basically stage this particular change, and then I would say, let's say upgraded deployment manifest to be compatible with preview 4. So that's that. However, there's one really important thing which I haven't done yet, which is if you want to get the full benefit of a system like GitHub or Azure DevOps, whenever you actually commit something, you want to put a reference in your commit message referencing the underlying issue number. So I'm working on issue number 11 right now, and the convention for that is that you put hash and the issue number there, and then the system will automatically pick up that this is actually something which is linked to that particular issue, and it will actually produce some very convenient hyperlinks. So really important, and it has to be the first thing that you always think about when you put a commit message in place. You should never forget an issue number, nor should you ever commit anything that's not actually related to an issue, because then you have no idea what the context is for it. Okay, cool. So if I commit that now, I can publish my branch, and there we go. If we then switch over to GitHub and go to that same repo, we can see the new branch was detected, and it's also telling us that something had been pushed. If we go to actions, there's nothing happening right now because we haven't set up our CI/CD pipeline so that anytime something gets pushed, a pipeline gets run. What I need to do instead, I need to actually create a pull request. So pull request means I, as a developer, think I've completed my task. I'm creating a pull request so that my manager or my engineering owner or release owner or whoever is in charge of reviewing and signing off things actually has something to look at, right? And that would be the pull request rather than an individual commit. So what I can do now, GitHub, as you can see, is super convenient. It pretty much gives me a button for this new branch, which I simply need to follow. So I want to say, this should ultimately go into my release branch. This is not a change I want to go straight into production. And again, here it's good practice to reference the underlying issue as well. So I'm just going to say, what was it? Upgraded to PBI tools preview 4. Here we go. Right. And now this one is integrated with CI/CD. So looking down here, we can see that something's now happening. This is actually where automation comes in. And this is also where I, as a developer, I'm going to get very immediate feedback. So we basically said when setting up the pipeline here, every time either a new pull request is opened or something is getting added to the pull request, a development pipeline should get run automatically. And we can see something's failed. Obviously, that's what I wanted, right? So not a surprise. But I wanted to demonstrate how quick it was for me to actually get that feedback, right? And it also means that my manager, for instance, doesn't even have to get involved here because at this point, this isn't even succeeding. So there's no point actually reviewing anything. So let's see what failed here. And there we go. So we're looking straight into the log from that particular CI/CD job. And what's happened is basically the reverse of the correction I did earlier, right? So basically on my machine, I've got the latest PPI tools version. So that wasn't able to read the old manifest. This pipeline is still using the old PPI tools version, which obviously isn't able to read the new manifest, right? So basically the second thing I need to do, I need to ensure that I'm actually upgrading not just the manifest itself, but also the PPI tools version I'm referencing. And that's what I wanted to demonstrate here. So if I go back and complete my task, which I would basically do inside my GitHub workflow YAML files, this one right here, where I'm referencing the container image, that's basically where I'm saying which version of PPI tools should be run. So I don't need to remember the version I'm looking for. I can just look that one up quite easily. And if I go to GitHub PPI tools, I've got packages here. There happens to be one single package, so that's quite convenient. We've got PPI tools core here, so that's the Docker image we're looking for. And then I can see this one here is preview 4, so that's the one I'm looking for. And all I need to do is to basically copy this tag or this label, go back here and make sure that it gets replaced. And in fact, because I need to change it in 3 different places, I can actually help myself by using the find in files feature. So here we go. It's finding it in the dev YAML file. It's finding it in the UAT YAML file, which is quite weird because I would also expect it in here, RC2. Interesting. See, so that's another thing which I didn't even notice previously. So it looks like dev and UAT were upgraded, but production wasn't. So production is still on a much older version, the one from May, and that was actually a very good way of finding out. So let me change this one and that one, and then let me go into production and override this one explicitly. And if I then go and see my changes, I would expect that each one of those files, each one represents a particular environment, basically has a similar type of change where we're now referencing preview 4 instead of what was there before. So there we go. So that's all good. Cool. So I think I've got my job done. So same thing as before. Start off by referencing the issue number. and then let's say upgraded the container, upgraded the image version in all GitHub YAML files. There we go. So if I commit that and sync, this time it doesn't have to create that branch because it already exists. So it just only has to push into the branch. What's now happening is I'm getting full automation in the sense that the same pull request I opened earlier will now pick up this new change, and we can see if we go to checks, there we go, that another pipeline run was triggered, and this one should now succeed because it's got an upgraded manifest, and it also has an upgraded YAML file, and there we go. So that's already it's already gone much further than where we were before, and we've seen that this actually worked very nicely. So it's now starting a full refresh. However, don't panic. It's just going to take a few seconds. It's obviously a demo data set, so that has a very small file. There we go. Only a very few files to read, and that's done. So that's pretty much the gist of what I wanted to show. So just going back to the pull request, this is the 1.11. We can see, first of all, because this particular branch was created on top of the issue 7 branch, which in turn was created on top of various other branches. This pull request now actually happens to be an aggregate of a whole range of changes, including the most recent one, the changes I added earlier. And we can see this was my first commitment. Commit, after which we had a failed pipeline, then my second commit, after which we had a successful pipeline. So very nice. We can see everything is green. When it says checks have passed, it basically means the corresponding pipeline succeeded. And we are basically good to go in terms of confirming this and merging the pull request, which would mean that it goes into a release branch. So let me do that. So confirm. Obviously, normally I, as the original developer, wouldn't do that myself. So just be clear, right? So this is generally something you would expect someone more senior to do. Obviously, I can. I'm only here on my own right now. So I'm just pretending that I've got all the powers. So. This is now merged, which means those changes have ended up in my release 1.1 branch, for which in turn we also have a pipeline set up, because any release branch by convention is actually linked to the UAT environment, right? So and we can see there's already a pipeline running. This one on the release branch as opposed to the issue branch, and we can look in there and we can basically follow live what's going on here, and it will pretty much do exactly the same. The only difference is that the data set has a different name. It basically has a UAT suffix, as we can see there, and it's also going into a different workspace. And there we go. All done. Perfect. Fortunately, there are no problems with GitHub Actions today. I had issues previously when GitHub actually had some problems exactly as I was about to demo things. So if we then switch over to my tenant, this is where the dev instance was deployed to, and this is where the UAT instance was deployed to. The best way of the best way of actually inspecting what's happened here is to go via the data hub. If I then look for Contoso sales UAT, yeah, that's the one. So if I go here, I can take advantage of the new tables feature, which was introduced to Power BI Service recently. And I can also take advantage of the fact that by convention, all my data sets have an info table, which actually, which always gives us some very useful runtime information. So looking at this, we can basically see what's the environment, when was the data updated? So 3:24 UTC is exactly now, so where I am, it's 4:25 at the moment. We can see the GitHub char. So that's basically an identifier for the specific commit that was at the top of that branch. We can see the run ID, we can see the branch, and we can see the dataset version. So this is complete proof that this dataset was actually deployed as well as refreshed just now and coming precisely from that particular pipeline. So to recap, just going back here, we started off planning our release using a milestone feature, which ends up containing a number of specific issues to work on. Developers then pick up issues individually. They create issue-specific branches, and they create pull requests when they're ready with their particular work. Pull requests will then trigger dev deployments. So that's the very first check. We can see if something went horribly wrong. As we could see earlier, the deployment wouldn't even succeed. And the pull request is basically where the release manager does their checks and ultimately the sign off. Once we're good and those pull requests are signed off, they go into a release branch, which then allows us to basically integrate a number of changes which are due and needed for that particular release, and which also allows us to get those changes deployed into a different environment, the UAT environment. And the final thing I'd have to do now, if I actually wanted to go all the way and make fully get that into production, I'd have to do a pull request going from my release branch back into main in order to then upgrade what's in production. So that is what your release manager would generally do, and you would usually also expect to produce some release notes. So I'm just going to fast forward here, and I'm just going to basically confirm this now, because we'll see that merging this particular pull request will also trigger a pipeline. Sometimes it takes a little, and hasn't picked it up yet. Let me just double check what the trigger is for production. Maybe I made a mistake here. So this one says, oh yes, yeah, sorry, I fooled myself here. So this one isn't getting triggered from commits, which is by design. I'm doing that intentionally. Instead, this one has a schedule, and the reason for that is because our deployment is actually linked to a refresh. We want to be in control with respect to when production refreshes happen. We don't want arbitrary refreshes to be triggered whenever someone happens to click that button. We want to make sure that we actually know when, and we define when a safe time is for production refreshes. And so that's why this one is on a schedule, which means I've just basically pushed things into the main branch, but it will only actually get into production whenever that schedule kicks off next. So yeah, apologies. I should have remembered that. And we will, yeah, so it could take up to 10 minutes now. So it's probably not worth waiting. But that's pretty much what I wanted to show today.
Yeah, that makes absolutely sense for me to separate the production from development, and it's quite to sum it up from my side. Yeah, you established a good GitHub workflow. It's nothing special like in development, but the key feature in Power BI tools are these details in the manifest you have shown, and all these possibilities to have different schedules for deployment, for refreshing. And so it's not only the process, but it's also the tools, because without these features you couldn't do it. So it's one step more to be even more professional than before. Yeah, but the process is still the key. You can have the best tool. If you don't have the right workflow, you can fail with Power BI tools.
Indeed. And yeah, that's sort of what I wanted to get across as well, right? There's no ranking, right? So both process and tool are equally important, and you've got to have both of them. But in terms of learning everything, generally you start with one or the other.
I would not even cannot even name if what I'm still missing there. It's so profound, the whole development process. So yeah, great. I like it very much. Very professional. So yeah, thanks. We promise to not make the talks so long again,
I
like
tried my best.
more than 1 hour. So it's cool. We covered only one topic this time, so we will go to other topics next time. We have some questions from Chris. Chris is here also in StreamYard, so if you unmute yourself or if you have a camera, I would even drag you in live. But Chris asked if it's better to use the latest release. Yes, I think so. So I think there's
Um,
reason not to use it.
Very good question, and in fact, even something I had planned to talk about as well, because I had exactly that same question as a issue raised recently, and issue number 183 on the PPI tools repo. And I gave, as you can see, I gave a pretty comprehensive answer to it, which I'm not going to read out to you right now. Have a look at 183. I'm talking about where we're at currently, because I admittedly the versioning is slightly confusing at the moment. The reason is I've got a particular vision with respect to what makes a 1.0 version, and there are still some missing features, right? And so that's why the versions which are being released right now, they have rather cryptic names, because it's all further steps towards getting to the really big 1.0 milestone. So I would say test. I would say if any of the new features which are available in the very latest release mean anything to you and you want to use them, absolutely go for it. However, make sure you test things properly, right? So if what's in RC1, for instance, which is now quite a while back, I think that was is still March, if I remember correctly. If that's fine for you and you don't want to have any of the dataset deployment features or refresh or SQL script deployments or any of that, that's also okay. But generally, anyone who's actively interested in a project, I would very much encourage people to always test out the very latest release, because I need that feedback, right? I need to understand whether anything is no longer working as expected.
Yeah. Great one. And then one more question from me, just interesting. You have shown us the validation failure because of the version. Do you ever came across some Power BI specific failures or mistakes where you really need all this tracking and tracing?
So errors could obviously happen during refresh when something changed in your queries, or even if something changed in your data sources, right? And you have schema mismatches. So that would come through as part of refresh, and you would get a more or less meaningful error message here. Everything else could only be related with respect to model metadata. I mean, for instance, if you're feeling brave, right, and I do that oftentimes, you don't even go into Power BI Desktop in order to make some trivial model changes, right? Like, just adding a new calculated column, or just changing a DAX expression, right? Theoretically, you can do that just in your sources without having to go all the way, as you know, right? Launching and working with Power BI Desktop can be painful because it's not fast or slim, right? And so if you do that, if you make code changes directly in your sources, obviously, there is a higher risk for things to go wrong, right? So those kinds of things would come up.
Yeah, like Florian said, one. It's also a good friend from the community.
Mm-hmm.
The fun starts in Power Platform when VS Code comes in.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that.
Okay, yeah, great talk. So this enough from me, and I think one statement to everyone who's still watching, because I was asked about this too. Yes, we are showing some in-depth stuff, but there's also tutorials around about how to start with Power BI tools. So don't be afraid if you're watching this for the first time, if it's your first video about Power BI tools. If you want to start, just go to Matthias' website. He has also very starter-friendly videos. It's very easy to start with some basic features and then develop. So, and if you are someone who is a developer in the enterprise context, we would like to hear from you how how you feel with the tools, what's your daily pains and other stuff. We can make another special session from the user side. I'm very open for it, so just write me on LinkedIn, write Matthias on LinkedIn, and yeah, may we meet here in a talk.
If you allow me to pitch one thing as well, in a couple of weeks' time, on the 23rd of September, Data Platform Virtual Summit will be, well, actually the entire week. It will run from the 19th to the 24th, I think, for 1 week. But on the 23rd, on a Thursday that week, my session will run. And I'm actually looking into the intricacies and internals of what's inside the PBX file. And then I'm moving on and explaining how PBI Tools helps making sense of those contents, and how PBI Tools is used for an end-to-end workflow. So that is very much a an introductory session in a sense. However, obviously it's a relatively advanced topic as well, because not many people presumably look inside their PBX files. That conference is all free to attend, and by all means check it out. Data Platform Virtual Summit, or DPS. There we go. My session is already recorded, so I know exactly what you're going to get. But I will be live available during the session. So there's a 1 hour slot, and you can come with any questions you've got. Oh, you're still muted, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yes, just thank you. As Chris is also saying thank you. So see you again. See you next time. And I'm also looking forward for the DPS to see more from you.
Fantastic. Enjoy your staycation. No, your workation at the Baltic Sea.
To work, even though I'm sitting here like on the beach.
Very jealous. Fantastic. Thanks for hosting me, Arta.
Yeah, great. You're always welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.